Hi, I'm Cal McMahon, and my film is Wasteman. It is a prison thriller about a guy who realizes that he is eligible for parole, and all he has to do is keep his nose clean, stay out of trouble. But he gets a new cellmate who has very different ambitions. This all began about 10 years ago when I started finding phone footage of UK prisons that was coming from inmates that had smuggled phones into there. And it was a completely new vision of prisons. It was like something I'd never seen before. It had this synthetic quality that was almost like, at certain moments, lighthearted, but in other moments more terrifying than any sort of depiction I'd seen before. And it just got under my skin. I got obsessed.
Yeah, so I play a character called Taylor, and he is kind of living this life that is kind of repetitious. Obviously, not getting much stimuli, being in prison, and desperate to get out because he has a very young child on the outside. But yeah, I mean, we kind of meet him there, and then obviously everything kind of changes when D comes into the cell as his new roommate, essentially. Yeah.
I played D, and he's just a proper wrong'un. He's someone who's been in the prison system for a little while, probably longer than Taylor, and he's been transferred from another prison to this prison. He's like a kind of a high security risk in the prison, so he gets moved around a lot, which is pretty common in the prison system. He gets moved into Taylor's cell, and very quickly we realize that he's not particularly eager to get out of the system. He kind of, instead of trying to reform himself and get out and get back to kind of life outside, he's kind of pretty content to, like, as he would call it, like boss the system and make the system his instead of the other way around. And that's much to Taylor's detriment.
I must give Cal his props. You know, he really let us inhabit these characters, and not in a way that felt gratuitous or voyeuristic. You know, we had reign. We were in a prison with actual ex-prisoners. You know what I mean? Like, there was no time for us to be acting. You know, we were we were right in it, or you weren't. So I got to be honest. It was a wonderful thing to inhabit. You know. There was that. We obviously, both of us had like a bit of a body transformation. I lost 30 pounds to play him because I just wanted him to feel paper thin. He's also a bit of an addict as well. So, and Tom, you know, gained a lot of weight. So yeah, no, I think it was a wonderful thing to inhabit, but we just didn't want it to feel anything other than authentic and true. And also just, I think at its heart, it's a story of hope. You know, and it's a story of how do we actually, you know, treat and rehabilitate prisoners and people, because that's what they are, they're people. So
yeah, I mean, like on a physical level, we're doing two very different things. David is, as Taylor, is kind of more subdued and like suffering with addiction, and so you kind of like shrank, right, like physically and energetically, and then I had to do the opposite. I had to like try and get as kind of puffed up and big as I could in a short amount of time, and also just energetically like get bigger. And when I first met with Cal, he was like, look, if we do this together, I want you to feel free to just kind of like take over the space. Like, I don't mind if you're a bit of a bully in the space, because D is a bully. And that's how he's manipulative, like physically. And so he kind of gave me permission to really go there. Sometimes I kind of felt bad. I was like coming on set, like being loud and rambunctious and just like taking over the space. And then David was like in the corner, like looking quietly, kind of like nervous and scared. And sometimes it was like, it felt a bit blurred, right? There were times where I was like, am I pissing David off? Am I pissing him off?
Never.
But then I had to just push through it. And then afterwards he'd be like, oh, it was great. And I was like, oh shit, good. Cause I thought you were falling out with me because I was being obnoxious.
no, but you are so right. And this was like, again, this is a Cal thing. He did it so beautifully. Our set was like it was like big school, do you know what I mean? It was like a playground. Like, it genuinely felt like a playground, but also like a bit of a jungle. Like, you had Tom Tate dominating half of the cell, you know, in our prison, and then you had, you know, like, you know, the guys who played Paul and Corin and yeah, you know, everyone kind of dominating space, and I'm like in the middle of it, like trying to have a sandwich. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, we really did have reign to like do what we wanted to do. There was no wrong. We just wanted to find something that felt real.
Yeah, I love that moment. So you just gave me a flashback to that moment where things are, not to give too much away, but things kick off in quite a big way for you with that in the wing, and you were just going for it full pelt. And I just remember that moment, cut and sort of going, yeah, I'm not going near him right now. He's just like, he's scary.
Yeah, you told me to go there, so
Yeah. I'd sort of thought about it a lot and was definitely thinking about how am I going to push everyone to the extreme. And obviously, really, it's sort of about talking to everyone and creating that inspiration. And there was something that was in particular with Tom's character, actually, that debate and the discussion we had about how can we bring out this sort of psychotic quality of this character and make him as intimidating. And I remember the first instance saying, oh, is there a situation where we keep you guys separate? So we bring Tom on like halfway through the set, and they haven't spent so much time together. They don't know each other so well, and we create in my naive sort of way thinking at that moment was thinking, oh, perhaps it just helps for him to get into the headset. But Tom had this great comment, which was, frankly, would rather it was the other way around. I'd rather get really friendly with David because we're going to do some pretty hardcore stuff to each other, and to do what we're going to do, I need to feel confident that I can go that far. And in hindsight, it was absolutely the right thing because there are scenes like violent scenes where I was so keen to make sure that we don't do Hollywood violence. I wanted to make something truly guttural and that really went there. Now that was a challenge in itself, just technically working with the stunt guys of how we're going to get this. Really, ultimately, where it comes from is you just got to rely on the boys just going for it. And there were moments where the two of them they were in a place where they felt comfortable with each other, where I remember there was one sort of scene where I kind of left them to it, and they just had a word with each other and said, look, let's just properly go for it. And they just went at it. So that was an interesting learning experience and sort of something I'll take forward.
To add to that, I don't think you were naive though to think that would work, because I think both things can work. Like you can do the kind of slightly method thing of keeping us apart and building the tension, but ultimately, like I think, especially because David and I come from like theatre training originally, I think it's trust, right? It's like you got to have trust on set, and I mean I think we all trust each other implicitly, and I think David and I had to really trust each other, and we've become like best mates through this process. So, so yeah, I think like both can work, but it's just like you just got to commit and trust in the process.
Trust.
Well, that's it for the questions. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you, guys.